Let's open with a question. How does an empire keep the peace across 1,000 star systems? The Galactic Authority's answer is routine patrols on clockwork schedules, sensor arrays tuned to flag even the faintest anomaly. Imagine a digital spider web, every filament calibrated for maximum control. Their doctrine? Predictability beats chaos. But here's a twist. Humans. Unpredictable, dangerous, and a perennial outlier in the Authority's risk models. They believe age levels all species. But does it really? Think about redundancy overlapping systems that ensure no single failure brings disaster. The Authority treats every border incursion as a systems test, and their faith in their own bureaucracy is absolute. Yet, as we'll see, faith in systems can be a fatal flaw. You might ask, why all this overkill for a lone derelict ship? Well, the Authority's history with humans justifies a little paranoia one rogue freighter could mean smuggling, espionage, or worse. Their tools, biometric scanning and threat assessment algorithms, think of them as high-tech lie detectors and probability calculators rolled into one. But systems, no matter how precise, can't account for everything, especially not when the unknown comes wearing a familiar face. So, what happens when an anomaly slips through the net? That's what we're about to discover. Picture this. A battered freighter, hull scorched, drifting along the edge of regulated space. To the Galactic Authority, it's just a blip on the radar until scans reveal a living, breathing human over a century old. His name? Dorian Reese. The ship's systems are barely functional, a relic from a bygone era. The biometric sensors, think of them as advanced medical tricorder show. Nothing alarming. No flagged criminal record. No current affiliations. Now, you might be thinking, why bother with an old man in a broken ship? But in Authority protocol, every unknown is a potential threat. So Captain Yarick's crew boards expecting an easy catch. Let me tell you a story. Sometimes the most ordinary appearances hide the most extraordinary secrets. Reese offers no resistance, just a shrug. The crew laughs humans are dangerous, sure, but not this one, right? But what if the most dangerous thing about a person is how little you notice them? Captain Yarick relishes the simplicity old, compliant human, minor contraband, no drama. It's almost routine. But routines can lull even the sharpest mind into complacency. During the arrest, the crew shackles Reese, confiscates his trinkets, and jokes about his fragility. Here's where the psychology of underestimation comes in. When all your training tells you that threat equals aggression, you miss the quiet ones. Have you ever been underestimated? Reese's calmness isn't passivity, it's calculation. He watches, memorizes, and bides his time. The crew, meanwhile, is busy mocking him, their attention scattered. In systems theory, this is called a blind spot of failure to recognize low probability, high impact risks. Reese is the embodiment of that blind spot. It's a setup for the perfect storm. What happens when you misjudge the quietest person in the room? Let's focus on a small detail. Ancient Earth military tags, worn and nearly illegible, discovered during processing. Military memorabilia? Or something more? The crew dismisses them as relics, souvenirs of a forgotten war. But in intelligence circles, such artifacts are called legacy identifiers traces that can reveal hidden pasts. Now you might ask, if these tags were important, wouldn't the scanners have flagged them? Not necessarily. Security systems rely on present data, not history. The past, in their view, is irrelevant. But here's a lesson. Objects outlast memory. Sometimes, the most dangerous secrets are the ones everyone has stopped asking about. And so Reese is sent to a high-security block, his past conveniently ignored, but the past has a way of resurfacing. Within hours of Reese's arrival, Volux 3 is plagued by system failures, cameras, glitch, doors jam, defense turrets go offline. Coincidence? The engineering crew thinks so, chalking it up to system decay. Let's break down two technical terms, cascading failure and signal interference. Cascading failure is when one malfunction triggers a chain reaction, a domino effect in digital infrastructure. Signal interference is when unexpected data disrupts communications, like static on a radio. Now, you might be thinking, isn't this just bad luck? But here's a hypothetical. What if someone understood these systems intimately enough to exploit their weaknesses while appearing passive? The crew's overconfidence blinds them. The lesson? In high-security environments, every unexplained glitch is a potential clue. They missed the pattern. Reese is more than a passenger. He's a catalyst. With malfunctions mounting, superiors order an expedited transfer to the central tribunal jurisdictional politics at play. In bureaucratic systems, this is called risk transference, passing the problem up the chain rather than solving it. The authority tightens restraints, moves Reese to maximum security, and still he complies. No protest, no panic. This is classic compliance camouflage, making yourself appear harmless by following every rule. Now, imagine you're Yarick. Wouldn't you feel uneasy? Something about Reese's calmness gnaws at him, but the system demands efficiency, not curiosity. Let me ask, how often do large organizations miss danger because it doesn't fit their checklist? The authorities' protocols are their own blindfold. And so the transfer proceeds, setting the stage for disaster. Thrown into the general population, Reese becomes an instant target. The first to test him is a Dravic enforcer 3 times his size, a walking weapon. What happens next? Seconds later, the Dravic is down, his wrist shattered. Let's talk about kinetic advantage using your opponent's force against them. Reese demonstrates this perfectly, moving with precision and efficiency. No wasted motion, no unnecessary violence. 2 more inmates try their luck, both are swiftly neutralized. Security footage? Glitching, conveniently useless. Now you might ask, is this luck or training? Here's the conflict. Reese doesn't gloat or threaten, he simply returns to his meal. This is the hallmark of psychological discipline, control over both body and mind. Resolution? The prison ecosystem recalibrates. The ghost is no longer invisible. Yarick's curiosity finally cracks the surface. He digs into Reese's background, peeling back layers of digital red tape. What he finds is chilling. Project Revenanta classified human military program, long thought extinct. Let's break down 2 terms. Biological enhancement, think genetic upgrades for speed, strength, and healing, and psychological conditioning training that rewires instincts for survival and deception. You might be wondering, how could the authority miss this? Simple. Data rot and intentional obfuscation. The records are buried, fragmented, erased by time and bureaucracy. Let me tell you, sometimes the most dangerous weapons are the ones everyone's forgotten. Reese isn't just a release, a survivor of a program designed to make ghosts. The setup is complete. The authority still thinks they've contained a harmless old man. They couldn't be more wrong. Security failures escalate. Turrets misfire, except never at Reese. Force fields deactivate at just the right moments. Doors fail in a predictable pattern. This isn't chaos, it's targeted disruption. In cybersecurity, we call this privilege escalation, using the system's own permissions to gain control. Reese is manipulating the Volix 3, exploiting every maintenance flaw. Now, you might ask, isn't this improbable? Not if you're trained to operate alone behind enemy links and expert in infiltration and sabotage. The crew finally realizes Reese moves with purpose, not randomness. The escalation is methodical. The setup, complete vulnerability. The conflict, the authority's pride versus a forgotten operative's craft. Resolution. Reese is no longer a prisoner. He's the architect of their undoing. As Yarick faces Reese, the balance of power has shifted. The captain, armed and desperate, demands answers. Reese, calm, unflinching, says, "I am the lesson you forgot." Here's the 3-act moment. Set up the authorities' overconfidence. Conflict, Reese's calculated response. Resolution, Reese commandeers the Volix. 3. Sending a cryptic message to a dormant human military network. Let's talk about redundant architecture systems built to survive attacks. Reese reroutes, controls, disables overrides, and leaves Yarick stranded. In military terms, this is containment reversal. The captive becomes the captor. Now, imagine you're Yarick, watching the ship vanish into the void. What lesson would you report? He warns, "We woke something that was supposed to stay asleep." The real lesson? In a universe obsessed with control, the greatest threat is the one you forget to fear. The Galactic Authority dismisses Yarick's warning as Fantasia failed mission report from a shaken officer, but the seeds of fear have been planted. Reese, the living ghost, is a reminder that history doesn't disappear, it waits. Let's talk about institutional amnesia, when organizations forget hard-won lessons, and asymmetric threat, a small, unexpected force that upends a powerful system. Now, you might wonder, is the Authority really safe? Or are they living on borrowed time, ignoring the ghosts in their own systems? Let me leave you with this. In the end, it's not the strength of your walls, but the shadows you ignore that define your fate. Reese is out there, a living question the Authority can't answer. And so, the galaxy remembers why humans, especially those forgotten by history, are still feared.
The Volix. 3 drifted through contested space. Partially crippled, its remaining systems under the old human's control. Yarick's transmission went unanswered, his pleas for backup, his warnings, all swallowed by bureaucracy that refused to see the threat. The Galactic Authority's Intelligence Division flagged his report as a low-priority incident, citing stress-induced hallucination or falsified data. They underestimated the human, clinging to their belief that age was the great equalizer. Reese navigated the prison ship with quiet efficiency. The crew he spared avoided him with silent terror, recognizing his dominance but unsure whether to intervene. The prisoners, predators of various species, no longer approached him. News of the Dravic enforcers' swift defeat had spread. Reese had dismantled violent thugs with improvised tools and overwhelming precision. He made it look effortless. Yarick, confined to his emergency pod, monitored the ship's diagnostics and recorded every move Reese made. The human's manipulation of the ship's subsystems had been deliberate and layered. He hadn't just exploited a vulnerability. He had mapped the Volix 3's architecture in minutes and executed attacks the crew had never conceived. Yarick realized Reese didn't just escape. He owned the vessel. Yarick accessed deeper security logs, tracing Reese's transmission to ancient Terran military networks. Fragments of Project Revenant files hinted at a broader, long-forgotten network. They hadn't arrested a relic. They had reactivated a dormant weapon. Reese operated with clinical precision. He siphoned encrypted intelligence from the Authority's secure archives, rediscovered obsolete human command codes still embedded in system firmware, and exploited legacy backdoors that modern ships never patched because they didn't remember they existed. Galactic technology had evolved, but some old protocols remained, quietly integrated, ignored by species that never thought humans would return to use them. Interceptor patrols were dispatched to capture the Volix 3, but Reese dismantled them with ruthless efficiency. He used the prison ship's degraded maneuvering thrusters to outflank modern vessels, leveraging outdated gravity well tactics the Authority considered obsolete. He disabled the interceptors without destroying them, neutralizing weapons, severing power couplings, and forcing surrender with minimal casualties. His moves were surgical, always steps ahead. Yarick, helpless to stop him, pieced together Reese's strategy. He wasn't fleeing at random. He was steering toward a dormant human relay station, a black site erased from galactic maps. Reese's activation message had likely reawakened automated defense grids, and Yarick suspected Reese planned to reconnect with whatever lay buried there. The Galactic Authority scrambled to contain the breach, but every attempt to intercept failed. Tactical AIs assigned to pursuit flagged Reese's maneuvers as non-standard human warfare patterns, unable to predict his next moves. The few veterans who had studied ancient Terran combat doctrine recognized his tactics and urgently called for a strategic reevaluation. Their warnings went unheeded. Inside the Volix 3, Reese systematically overhauled the ship. He rerouted power conduits, repurposed prison security systems into offensive arrays, and reprogrammed drone units to operate under his direct control. Guards attempting to retake key sections were incapacitated without lethal force. Reese didn't kill unnecessarily. He neutralized efficiently, conserving resources. Yarrick watched as his former crew turned to Reese, some out of fear, others out of pragmatic survival. They realized they were safer under his rule than resisting him. The prison population remained subdued, understanding instinctively that challenging him meant obliteration. Reese's modifications extended beyond weapons. He reinforced the ship's communications to relay heavily encrypted signals across forgotten human defense grids. Silent acknowledgments returned. Whatever he had called was listening. The ship's transponder changed subtly, adopting an old Terran military signature long thought decommissioned. Reese wasn't just escaping. He was rebuilding something the galaxy had worked hard to forget. The authorities' next move was desperation. They deployed 2 battlecruisers to intercept Reese near the graveyard orbit of a collapsed star system. Reese manipulated the Volix 3's trajectory to pass through debris fields deemed too hazardous for pursuit. While the battlecruisers cautiously navigated the field, Reese activated dormant kinetic mines, ancient human defenses that the Authority failed to detect. The mines detonated with precision, crippling the lead cruiser and forcing the second to withdraw. Yarrick's dread deepened. Reese wasn't improvising. He was enacting contingency plans written generations ago. The human hadn't just survived the Revenant program. He had memorized protocols, fallback positions, and classified safe routes. He had planned for a war that never came and now executed strategies perfectly preserved in his memory. Reese established control over the Black Site relay station with no resistance. The automated defenses recognized as command codes, untouched by the passage of time. Yarrick intercepted fragments of Reese's transmissions, unable to decipher them but noting their frequency matched ancient Earth military emergency protocols. The Galactic Authority attempted a final intervention, assembling a fleet to blockade the sector. Reese, controlling both the Volix 3 and the newly reactivated defense platforms, sent a message to the fleet commander. The message was short. This ground is held. Turn back. When the fleet advanced, Reese unleashed kinetic strikes from the Black Site's railgun batteries, targeting propulsion systems and rendering warships inoperable without total destruction. He offered retreat corridors to all vessels. The fleet, battered and disarmed, accepted and withdrew. Reese could have annihilated them but chose to demonstrate restraint. The Authority revised his classification to Level 1 extinction threat. They scrambled to analyze his tactics, but their algorithms consistently failed to project his next moves. Reese didn't fit modern combat models. His strategies belonged to an era of warfare the galaxy had abandoned, an era where humans shaped battlefield with grit, subversion, and brutal pragmatism. Yarrick was finally retrieved by a secondary patrol. His debriefings were dismissed until fragments of his ship's logs were verified. By then, Reese had vanished again. The Black Site was stripped clean, the Volix 3 refitted and untraceable. Rumors spread across criminal syndicates and military channels. A human ghost soldier had resurfaced. Ancient human tactics manuals, once archived as curiosities, became black market commodities. Mercenary commanders scoured their libraries for references to Project Revenant, desperate to understand what had been unleashed. Reese didn't resurface in predictable theaters. Instead, he struck quietly against Authority outposts, always disabling, never destroying. His moves destabilized key supply routes, sowed fear among enforcement fleets, and forced the Authority to overextend its forces. He became a story told in hushed tones among soldiers and pirates alike. The Revenant, a human relic who moved with the precision of a machine and the instincts of a predator, an ancient weapon the galaxy had forgotten